Today we're going to be doing a reading called Everything is Everything. Everything is Everything was a story that I wrote for the Scandalous Heroes box set. And that was a box set that was written a couple of years ago with several other IR authors. And if you didn't get that box set when it was there, you missed out on a bunch of good stories. But hi everyone, this is Pepper Pace. I am an author of IR romance, erotica, sci-fi, street lit, you name it, I write in that genre. If you want to know more about Everything is Everything, or if you want to know how to purchase it, it is available in both digital as well as paperback on Amazon, Smashwords, and Barnes & Noble. And you can get the link below, or if you want to know more about me, there are several links that will tell you more about me. So I'm going to set up this story. As I said, it takes place in the 70s, and quite honestly, a lot of it has to do with my childhood. What Vanessa is the little girl who lived in the projects, her mother, who was a single mother. So everything is not quite exactly my life. I had a mom and a dad and sisters. Vanessa is a only child. It's just her and her mom. Her mother wanted to move Vanessa out of the bad part of, the projects. So they moved up the hill from the projects to an area called Garden Hilltop. Garden Hilltop was still the projects, but Garden Hilltop had nice townhomes. The thing about Garden Hilltop is that you could look out and see straight down into the rest of the projects. So a lot of times if you were in the projects and you were looking up the hill, you could see the lights of the hill. And it did give that whole idea that those people who lived up there were better off. But if you were like Vanessa, when she looked down there, she felt like that was where the life was. That was where everything happened. She was like very protected. Her mother didn't let her go out. She was a latchkey kid. So her mother was out all hours of the night. Her mother had a nighttime job. Was not always dependable. Sometimes Vanessa had to walk home from school. And when she walked home from school, and she felt kind of separated from everybody else. All her other schoolmates lived in, the bottom of the hill, Finlater Gardens, and the projects, while she lived at the top of the hill. So she felt very disconnected from them. And there was a building that she had to walk past. And this didn't happen all the time, but when her mother didn't show up, she'd have to walk home from school, walk past this building where there had been a little girl found dead. So there were things that scared her about the projects at the same time that it fascinated her. She was different. She looked different. She had long, straight hair and a straight nose. People would sometimes ask her if she was multiracial or if her daddy was a different color, his daddy was white. She would adamantly no. My mother told me my father was black. She didn't know her father, had never met her father. But, that was Vanessa's story. Then we have Scotty Tremont, and his story was very sad in that he also was raised by a single mother, but she was a prostitute and a drug addict. So Scotty sometimes he was the person who was taking care of his family. I mean, he was a teenager, and he's taking care of his family, doing what he has to do, and it's not legal. His family has bad reputation. People call him trash. But Scotty has an older brother who everyone is afraid of. His name is Tino, and he's a teenager too. But Tino, where Scotty might have this perception that he's a bad person, or you would be afraid of Scotty. You definitely would be afraid of Tino because he's a drug dealer. He's angry. He don't mind hurting you. So I apologize. It's summertime when I'm doing this reading, and I'm glistening right now. So Scotty has a lot of brothers and sisters. They're all different races. And Tino is part Puerto Rican. And that summer, there was a body of a child found in a building. And although Vanessa doesn't know Scotty or his brothers and sisters, she has seen Tino coming out of that building before the little girl was found dead. So she's never told anybody, but she's very, very afraid of the Tremonts. She's very afraid of Tino because she thinks Tino is a killer, and he's bad news. So when we start this reading, we're going to start at chapter 1, 1977. All right, I'm reading on my computer, so hopefully this time I make better eye contact. Let's move it over here. Chapter 1, 1977. Jalissa, my mama is going to know if you drink that much. Vanessa reached for the glass of wine held by her cousin, but the other girl quickly downed half of it. Just put water in the bottle. She won't know, Jalissa slurred. Don't drink any more. Now she regretted ever telling Jalissa that sometimes when her mama was out, she took a sip of the wine. Vanessa grabbed the glass from her cousin and then uncapped the bottle and carefully poured the remains back into it. Vanessa saw that her 11-year-old cousin was pouting. Jalissa sometimes seemed bent on sabotaging things, and she wondered if it was because her cousin was mad that she was older. It was only by half a year, but Jalissa always brought it up, saying things like, "You might be older, but I'm wiser." Then her cousin would put her hands on her plump hips and try to look tough. Well, to Vanessa, her cousin was tough. Jalissa lived at the bottom of the hill in the projects of Winton Terrace, and she always told stories about the dope man that hung out on the corner by the store, or some kid getting snatched and then turning up later only to be taken by 241 kids. If 241 kids took you, then you had to live in a foster home, which was the most horrible fate that can befall you. In a foster home, you were treated just like some grown-up slave. Vanessa admired her cousin. She knew everything, so Vanessa forgave her bossiness because they were blood, and even if Jalissa sometimes punched her in the arm too hard, she didn't complain. Jalissa was her only friend, and that was no joke. Her mama didn't allow her to go to the sleepovers at her classmates' homes, and she wasn't allowed to go to the park or even to someone's house after school unless it was to Jalissa's. But that was not a place that Vanessa ever wanted to go. And since Jalissa loved coming up to the top of the hill, that is where they mostly hung out. And let's listen to Richard Pryor, Jalissa exclaimed, as if she hadn't just been completely obnoxious. Vanessa ignored her as she concentrated on not spilling a drop of the wine. It would be her getting a whooping and not Jalissa, and her mother would know if it was watered down. She wasn't dumb. Jalissa sighed. Okay, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Please. We can listen to Sparkle, and you can be Sparkle this time. Jalissa had her palms pressed together as if in prayer, and Vanessa relented and smiled. She already knew that Jalissa really preferred being Sister from the movie, but because Vanessa preferred being Sparkle, Jalissa would always take that role. Once Vanessa had made the mistake of saying that she should be Sparkle because her hair was longer, and Jalissa had punched her in the face and called her stuck up. Jalissa's hair was hopeless. She couldn't even pull it into a ponytail, and sometimes she plastered Dax into it just to make baby hair. Jalissa was short and pudgy, but she had dimples that Vanessa secretly wished she had, not knowing that Jalissa secretly wished that she was tall and lanky with long Indian hair like Vanessa's. The two friends went to the stereo and listened to Richard Pryor for a while before putting on the well-used album from their favorite movie. They had gone to the Regal Theater to watch it no less than 5 times, sneaking in on 2 occasions one Saturday when Mama was out all day. The two girls began to shimmy and shake, mimicking the dance steps perfectly. Jalissa belted out the lyrics to Giving Him Something He Can Feel. But when Look Into Your Heart began to play, Vanessa sang much more quietly, but with an intense fervor. Next, they played the soundtrack to Lady Sings the Blues and pretended to be Billie Holiday. By that time, it was getting dark and time for dinner. Is your mama coming home to cook dinner? Vanessa shrugged. Her mama said one thing, but that didn't mean that she would do it. She would say that she was going to pick her up after school, and sometimes Vanessa would wait for half an hour before walking home all the way to the top of the hill. And by that time, all the other kids would have already left, and she would have to walk by herself past the building. And then, when she got home, she would pray that the key would be under the mat. Most times it was, but when it wasn't, then it got scary. Her mama had moved them out of the projects of Winton Terrace when she was 4 years old, but only to the top of the hill in new townhomes called Garden Hilltop. Everyone thought that you had to be rich to live there, and Jalissa certainly thought that she was rich. Vanessa had her own bedroom with princess furniture and dolls and her own record player. She even had an easy bake oven, which was broken, and a tea set that she never played with because there was no one to have tea with. Vanessa decided that they probably were rich. Her mama had the coolest clothes and drove a Cadillac. When they went places, she would put an 8-track in the deck and they would start singing Diamond in the Back, Sunroof Top, Digging the Scene with the Gangsta Lean, ooh, ooh. After dinner of pork and beans and wieners, the girls retreated to Vanessa's bedroom. The street lights had come on and all the kids that played hide and seek and basketball in the large front parking lot had gone home. Vanessa sat in her window seat while Jalissa played with her Barbie dolls. She wasn't allowed outside when her mama was at home, which was most of the time, so she watched from the window. Sometimes the kids would spot her and beg her to come out with her toys, and in embarrassment she would hide behind the curtains and watch them secretly. Jalissa handed her a Barbie doll and joined her on the window seat. Vanessa accepted the doll, but at 12 she had long ago lost interest in playing dolls. If you had binoculars, I bet we could see straight down the hill and into my house, Jalissa stated, although she didn't live in a house. She lived in an apartment where it smelled like pee in the hallway. Vanessa thought that it was strange to look out her bedroom window and be able to see straight down the hill into Winton Terrace. She squinted and saw the distant figure of a boy riding his bike up the hill. He did it most every evening. She knew because she was always in the window watching when he made a circuit up the hill, around their parking lot, up the second hill, and then back down to Winton Terrace. A lot of the boys did this, but she noticed him specifically because he was white. There were barely any white people in her neighborhood, unless you counted that lady from India, but she was blacker than regular black people even if she had white people's hair. Here comes that white boy on his bike, she said. Jalissa squinted, and as the figure grew closer and reached the front parking lot, Jalissa scowled. That's Scotty. I bet he stole that bike. Vanessa looked at her in surprise. You know him? No, she hollered in outrage. He is white trash. They say his mama sell her coochie on Vine Street. Jalissa hid behind the curtains and yelled out the partially opened window. White boy, what you doing up here? Vanessa gasped and hid behind the curtain too. She peeked out, but the boy didn't appear to have heard them. Jalissa continued to yell at him, calling him Whitey, Honky, Cracker, as he continued up the second hill. He wasn't really a boy in the sense that he was older than them, probably already a teenager. Vanessa's heart was pounding. She had never called anyone names like that, and her face felt hot. She knew it was wrong, but it was exciting listening to Jalissa cussing. Soon Scotty came back down the second hill, and Vanessa called out, trying to think of something to say. I see you, Scotty, but you don't see me. Ha 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 ha. Jalissa slapped her arm and slapped it hard. Why did you say his name? She hissed. Scotty turned his head in the direction of their parking lot for the first time, acknowledging their calls. He never stopped pedaling, but she heard him clear as day. You better turn out your light. Your mama's coming. And then he was on his way back down the hill to Winton Terrace. Vanessa's eyes widened, and she saw her mama's Cadillac heading up the hill. Oh my God. Vanessa scampered away from the window seat and hurried to turn out the light. He saw us, Jalissa squealed. No, we were behind the curtain, Vanessa stated. But the light was on. He could probably see us. The girls quickly scampered into bed. There was school tomorrow, and they were supposed to be in bed by 9, regardless of whether or not her mama was home. Scotty is going to beat me up, Jalissa whined. Vanessa was scared. That boy knew her mama. That meant he also knew who she was. Right, so that is the end of not the end of chapter 1, but that's the end of this part of the reading. So I'm going to continue with the beginning of chapter 3 because that shows, I think it's really important to show how Vanessa and Scotty have their first meeting. Vanessa is terrified. This is about 2 days later. Vanessa is terrified that Scotty, now that he knows who she is going to beat her up for calling him all of those bad names, even though it was really Jalissa that was calling him those bad names. And of course, she has since learned that Scotty is Tino's brother. So she's doubly afraid of him, terrified of him, in fact. But she's still curious as to why Scotty knows her, or how Scotty knows her. Chapter 3. Vanessa waited 15 minutes after her mother left for work, just in case she came back. Sometimes she did that, came back, because she had forgotten something or other. Once she felt enough time had passed, she grabbed some Barbies, a jump rope, and then headed outside. Vanessa didn't do this often, but for one thing, she was afraid that someone would tell on her, but mostly because her mother's schedule in the evenings were unpredictable and she might dash home for dinner and then run right back out, or she might be extra long at the bar and not return until after 2 a.m. It didn't take long for Vanessa's toys to draw the attention of the neighborhood kids, who played with her because she had the best toys ever. Playing with the toys soon led to games of tag and Mother May I. Vanessa and the other children laughed and ran through the parking lot, but never going further than that because even though Vanessa's mother wasn't present, she knew that the parking lot was her safe zone, and beyond that, bad things could happen. The street lights flickered on a short time later, and the little girls ran off to their homes, yelling goodbye. Vanessa smiled happily and then gathered up her toys and went back into her house. She ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and had a glass of milk for dinner. She turned on the stereo and played the Jackson 5 until she got tired of dancing and singing ABC and I Want You Back and her all-time favorite, Ben. She didn't care if it was a song about a rat. One day she was going to marry a man named Ben and sing that song to him. She was carrying her Barbies upstairs when she remembered that she didn't have her jump rope. Vanessa's eyes widened. If her mama saw the jump rope outside, she dropped the dolls to the floor and dashed down the stairs. She pulled back the drapes and squinted out the window to see if Mama's car was making its way up the hill. Not many cars came up this way, generally just the people that lived up here. There weren't any stores or schools or anything else but townhomes in Garden Hilltop. Vanessa took a deep breath and then unlocked the door and dashed out into the night. There were different levels of wrong. Yes, it was wrong to go outside during the day when her mother wasn't home, but it was definitely wrong to go outside at night when there was absolutely no one around to help her if something bad happened. Bad was a word that caused her to think of the dead little girl in the building down the hill. She quickly scanned the ground outside of her house, already nervous, but not just because her mother might find out, but also because it was dark outside. Not seeing the rope on her stoop, she considered that one of those little heifers had stolen it. And then she saw a gleam of color in the grass at the edge of the parking lot. Now she remembered dropping the jump rope with its yellow plastic handholds. She remembered dropping it there when they started playing tag. In relief, she crossed the parking lot, and sure enough, there was her jump rope, partially concealed by the weeds and grass. But Vanessa didn't immediately pick it up. Her mouth parted as she took in the sight of the starlit sky above her and the twinkling artificial lights of the homes below her. She forgot to be scared as the beauty of the velvety night began to take the place of her fear. The moon set like a huge light bulb above everything, and the magnitude of her place in the universe struck her. She was just one little girl standing in one parking lot, in one city of her country, on one world among many planets and stars that made up the Milky Way, which was just one galaxy in the entire universe. The idea of it was overwhelming. She stared into the sky as she tried to fathom the concept that she was nothing, insignificant, a speck. Movement caught her attention, and in alarm, she saw the familiar bike rapidly approaching from the winding hill that led from Winton Terrace. She squealed in alarm and darted back across the parking lot and towards the safety of her house. She was halfway there when she remembered that she didn't have her jump rope. Vanessa stopped and indecisively did a dance that took her one step back to the rope and then a hop towards the safety of her home before she repeated it. She had to get the rope. Someone would steal it or Mama would see it, and that would be it for her. She turned just as Scotty Tremont's bike entered her parking lot, alarmed at how quickly he had arrived, but terrified when she realized that he was heading toward her. Another squeak of fear escaped her lips as she dashed back to the edge of the lot, running faster than she had ever run before, even faster than she would run past that building. She snatched at the rope at the same time that her body changed position to make the sprint back to the opposite direction. She looked like she had just been passed the baton in an Olympic race. Now she could hear the smooth metallic sound of bike pedals, and she risked a glance in that direction. Scotty Tremont was staring right at her, and instead of coasting the circumference of the parking lot like he normally did, he was pedaling faster, his legs pumping rapidly as he closed the distance between them. She yelped in terror and then immediately tripped over the looped end of the rope and went skidding across the gravel parking lot, face down, palms down, knees scraping. She felt the sting of her skin being peeled back, and a teeth-clattering moment later, her mouth slammed to the ground and pain exploded at the exact moment that her two front teeth ran through her bottom lip. For just 1 second, the world was quiet and still around her. She didn't even hear the bike and rider approaching her. She didn't see the stars or the small rocks that were now buried in her palms and knees. She didn't taste the blood that filled her mouth, nor the pain that would soon be nearly unbearable at her chipped and loosened teeth. The world was just an infinite place where nothing meant anything, not even a little girl lying on a parking lot in a city within a country on this world called Earth, which was part of the many other planets that made up the galaxy which crowded the universe. But the next second, her cries of pain filled the night. The clatter of a bike dropping to the ground and the rapid footfalls of sneakered feet hitting the pavement was Vanessa's new universe, and, of course, pain. A hand reached for her arm, and she cringed. Only the touch wasn't rough. It didn't bring pain. 2 hands helped to lift her into a sitting position, and she held up her bleeding palms but didn't otherwise look at them. She just stared fearfully into Scotty Tremont's blue and gray eyes. Scotty's brow gathered as he stared at the gruesome sight of the bloodied girl. She was pretty scraped up, but wasn't crying. She was just staring at him in shock. What in the hell was she doing out in the night wearing just pajamas? As he took in the sight of her bloody palms, his expression calmed. It was pretty bad. Hiding his grimace, he took one of her hands and gently removed small rocks that were embedded in the heel of her palm. When he thought he found them all, he reached for the other hand and did the same. When he was finished, he met her eyes again, and the little girl was watching him in surprise. He looked at her knees and masked the look of disgust at the sight of the layers of skin which had been scraped away to reveal blood-coated flesh. She surprised him when she didn't make a sound as he picked out the gravel burrowed in her flesh. He scanned her for more injuries and then suddenly frowned. "You are in so much trouble." Vanessa tensed and her heart slammed against her narrow rib cage. She shied away from him. "There is no way that you're going to hide this from your mother," he continued, and Vanessa's eyes widened as she realized the truth of those words. Those words cut through the fear that she had only a short moment ago felt for him. Yet despite the sudden awareness that she was destined to be in trouble for sure and should be darting back to the house to hide the evidence of her crime, she just had to know. "How do you know me?" Scotty stood and headed back to his bike. "Your mother drives a white Cadillac." He climbed back on his bike and continued his circuit around her parking lot. She sat there and watched him until he headed up the smaller hill to the second parking lot. He turned his head swiftly and looked at her. "Go in the house, Vanessa," and then he was gone. Okay, so that was Everything is Everything. If this story interests you and you would like to read more, again, you can find the link on my Amazon page. This book is available on Smashwords, Amazon.com, as well as Barnes & Nobles. It's available in digital as well as paperback, and there is also a book too. So enjoy.